Okay, so we're starting oil painting today. Hello! Okay, we're gonna go over the materials because there's a lot for oil painting. So oil painting is similar to acrylics in the way you paint and totally different than watercolor. So with acrylics, you know, there's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it dries so fast. The bad thing is it dries so fast. So with oil, what everybody always says is that, you know, it doesn't dry, it takes a long time, and you have time to blend. Which I think I already said that to you guys. I hate blending. No blendy blendy, that's my thing, that's my slogan. So, but I'll get to that to show you why it looks fresher when you don't blend. But the nice thing is with oil, you can correct your mistakes like with acrylics. All right, let's go about materials. Let's see here. Well, let me start from the ground up. Okay, what do we paint on? It's kind of like acrylics. You can paint on pretty much anything. The most common thing is, of course, a stretched canvas. So we're all gonna get one of these. Okay. So stretched canvas, and these are the cheapy ones. And you also know, you know, they make them on the panels, so there's cardboard, so it's not stretched, you know, it's just glued to it. So this is canvas. You can paint on wood, you can paint on masonite, which I do, which is this stuff. Did I talk about that during the acrylic session? Okay. In your husband's garage or in your garage, you'll probably have that pegboard, you know, where you hang your tools. That is masonite. Oh. So this is masonite without the holes. So I love that, and when I go to the plein air events, I would say at least 50% of people paint on this, or maybe 40%.
Why do you like it better?
I'll get to that, but basically the thing is when you have canvas, and you all know how canvas feels, right? Mm-hmm. Where did I put it? Oh, here. So it's like a fabric, and you know, there's a weave to it. Mm-hmm. So, let me just check that someone's calling me. That was terrible. Sorry about that. I hope I didn't scare anybody. So anyway, so it's like fabric. So when you paint on it, you don't always get into all the nooks and crannies, right? So you go over and over again, and that's where you get to be all muddy. Because the more you go over it and blendy, 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 the more you destroy all your fresh colors. So, on this one here, it's very smooth, and I can pass it around. It's very slick, and the paint just kind of sits on there, and there's no grooves that you have to dig in or anything. So, I'll have you guys try both of them. So I have a canvas for you all, and one of these, and we'll try them out. Yes,
do you
question?
get that from Home Depot and cut it, or do you? How do you
Good question. Do I get that from Home Depot? Yes. When I first discovered this material, I'm very cheap. I went to Lowe's. They have a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet, and they have the free cutting. So I went there and I said to the guy, "Can you cut this for me into several sizes?" And he rolled his eyes, and he's like, "Okay." He cut them all for me. I was all happy because, like, 30 of these in any size that I wanted cost me like $20.
Oh my gosh.
So I was painting and painting, and then some of them turned out okay, and I put them in the frame, and he had cut them just a little off.
Oh.
So it was an 8 by 10, but it was just a little cock, like a parallelogram, so it didn't fit in the frame. And I'm like, that's what you get from being cheap.
Oh.
So they sell these at Michael's. They're a little bit thinner than this particular one. This is a really cheap one that I got at Amazon as a 12-pack. I think one of these comes to like $2. That's pretty cheap. Because when you think about this, something like this also is about $1.50 or so. Mm-hmm. And if you buy them single, this might be up to $4 or $5. Mm-hmm. So the other panels, they're called ampersand. They have them at Michael's, everywhere else. They're a little thinner, and they're great.
Round like that?
Yes.
I've never seen that.
Well, this is the raw material, so they're brown. but you have to gesso them. We did talk about the importance
Oh.
of gesso at the acrylics, right?
I see, I missed the acrylic class.
Oh, okay.
So that's,
I think it's-
Anytime you paint on anything, acrylic and oils, not watercolor. Again, always acrylics and oils are very similar. So anytime you paint on anything with acrylics and oils, you have to prime it. Just like when you paint your wall, you would never just paint over it with just straight color. You would first prime it, right? Because it takes the color on. The reason for the primer is that the oil paint, especially all the oils in that paint, will attack the fibers, especially the canvas. And in 100 years, when your stuff hangs in the museum, it will disintegrate, or it will, get some damage. So the primer is like a barrier between the fabric and the oil paint.
What did you call that in the thinner version, ampersand?
Ampersand.
Ampersand.
Again, anything like that, I'll send you a link to,
Okay.
yeah. And I think that was in the summary too that I sent you guys, but that was before this class, so when you read something and I haven't talked about that, then it's like Chinese. So now when you reread it, but I'll send it again, I'll make sure it's on there.
But your canvases come pre-gessoed, right?
Oh yes, when you buy them, they always say they're pre-gessoed. Don't trust that because they run through the factory and they spray a little stuff on there and then, oh, it's gessoed. No.
oh.
So you always kind of want to, if you're in a rush or I'm just practicing a little bit, don't worry about it. But if you kind of know this is going to be my masterpiece, put some gesso on. Yes.
So I've gessoed these both
Mhm.
and YouTube videos. The rule of thumb through several artists was to put gesso down,
Uh-huh.
let it dry, and then lightly sand.
Mm-hmm.
Get the dust
Yes.
off, do it again.
Yep.
And then lightly sand. This paper, this canvas paper, and I knew this ahead of time from the video, it wrinkled
Mhm.
when it was wet, but it does, when you put oil on it, kind of
Yeah.
solves
Yeah.
that problem, but,
Mhm.
yeah, so that was my experience with the gesso.
Yeah, so gesso is good, and you can paint on anything. You can even paint on this paper that we've been using,
Oh my gosh.
and we're gonna do an exercise on that if we run out of other stuff. You just put gesso on it, or you can paint, like, was it the guy? I think he painted on cardboard, and it still looks fine. So,
Do you have that gesso with you?
yes, I do.
Because I've never done that. Oh my gosh.
I thought we did that during the acrylics, but I guess I skipped that step, and I figured it's super important. I meet so many people that have been painting for 20 years, and they're like, gesso, what is that? So you really need to prime your stuff. It doesn't take long, and it kind of gets you into the mood. Sometimes when I'm like, I want to paint something, but I don't get into it, this is just such a mundane thing, it gets you into painting. Helps me. So we'll do that actually, so you guys get used to it, because it's very important. So then they have, whoops, and this was a big pad, I cut it in half. This is the canvas paper, and I think this was from Michael's. I found one at Hobby Lobby recently. It's really nice. Sometimes it's just like starchy paper. This one is actually like fabric. It's really nice, I like it.
Which
You
brand
can-
name?
Huh?
Which brand?
I don't know, I cut off the bottom where all the
Oh.
information was, so
Okay.
sorry about that. But I'll find it again. And as you can see on the back, it almost looks like raw fabric, actually. You can see that's raw. And this part is gesso. You can paint on either side, so we can try that too.
So that came gessoed, you don't need to do it again or anything when you bought that.
Yeah, but again, if you want to do some, I wouldn't try to do a masterpiece on it. Some artists use this here, and then once it's done, they glue it on a board.
Mm.
So it's at least rigid. They also have some really nice, so the king of materials is linen. So that's a little bit finer than canvas. It has a little tighter weave, and it's, I would say, almost in between this and the masonite. It has a weave, but not as much, and a lot of portrait painters use it because they have to get all that detail. So, imagine if you had to paint a lot of detail on this big weave canvas, and you have to dig in and get into all those things. That just wouldn't be good. So you can buy linen, I bring that next time, on linen pads. They're really nice. I'll bring that next time. I didn't bring that.
Would you have to gesso on the linen, or just?
Yeah, same thing,
Oh, my
yeah.
Lord.
And always natural fibers, no nylon or polyester or anything?
I guess you could paint on that. I'm not sure about that in particular, polyester or nylon. There's a new thing, or not really that new. You can paint on copper plates. They sell them, very expensive. You can paint on aluminum. I ordered some. I haven't tried it yet. You can pretty much paint on anything. You can paint on normal wood. Oh, here, no, that's not it. This is not wood. I'll bring a cradled wood panel next time what I paint it on. Those are really nice and they're sturdy. So, and you can frame them in a very modern way. Those are really nice and pretty cheap. I'll bring them next time.
Some people paint on like saws.
Oh, yeah, I
Yes,
mean, that's kind of the same thing. Or the big palmetto leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, you can really paint on anything. I mean, I don't know how long that's gonna last, but
But you'd have to gesso it.
yeah, I would
Everything.
gesso it. I mean, the saw, yeah, I guess. I mean, I painted on a glass bottle before without gessoing because that should be fine. So you can do a nice oil painting on a bottle or on glass, for sure. So it's very, very versatile. Okay, so this is what are we painting on. What are we painting with? We're painting with oil paint. Where is it here? And on that one, I advocate the same limited palette that we did with acrylics. So just 3 colors in its strictest sense, which is yellow, red, and blue. Oh, I should have just quizzed you guys. Yellow, red, and blue, and then a white and a black. And the yellow, red, and blue, there's a warm and a cool of each. And again, with the warm and cool, I've been painting since I was 12. And I just learned about the warm and cool about 5 years ago. So if you don't get it, don't worry about it. Okay, oil paint. It comes in tubes. This is the most normal, regular size. And then this is the mega size. Any brand is good. I really haven't seen any except the Michaels brand and the Hobby Lobby brand. I don't think it's called Artist Loft. They have a lot of filler in there. So if this tube costs on average between $7 and $12 depending on the color, and you get the Artist Loft and it's $4, you're not saving a lot, because it's like when you buy cheap wall paint. Instead of going over it once, you have to go over it twice. It's frustrating in the process, and it doesn't look good, and it takes longer. So for a couple of dollars, something like this, if you paint, like me, at least 30, 40 oil paintings a year, if you buy them the basic colors in that tube, it'll probably last you at least 5 years. You don't really use that much. You do use a lot of white. This is not white, but if you buy some, get the big tube of white, and it's probably usually $20.
Okay.
But there's always sales, and you know at Michael's, you get the coupon. All right, so those are the other thing is, there is now, probably for the last 15 years, they came out with water mixable oils. Because everybody who, I want to get into oils, but it's all that, messy chemicals in the medium, and it smells, and the turpentine, and blah, 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 and it's so messy to clean it up. So they go with the water miscible. So you can thin the paint, and you can clean your brushes with water, with those.
What's the longevity? They don't know the longevity yet, do they?
No, they're pretty much comparable. It's just less messy, and you can mix the regular oils with the water miscible for a certain extent, like 30 to 70 or something like that, and it's still fine.
Wow.
I tried them out, and I don't really care for them too much because they're a little bit grittier. There seems to be more stuff in it or something. I don't know. But now they, changed the formula, so I'm sure they're pretty close to this. So you can mix them. question?
I noticed when I opened a new tube of paint
Mm-hmm.
and the oil was in the tub and it came out and I was like,
Oh,
oh
yeah.
no, am I losing all the oil that's in
Oh,
there? So
okay.
I tried to shake it.
So when you open so I'm repeating it so in case they
Yes.
don't understand.
Yeah.
So when you open a new tube of paint or an old one too, sometimes the oil collects there and you
Yeah.
get all oil and then all the paint. That's fine if you want. You can maybe store them like this upright, or if you know certain brands are more susceptible to that, you can maybe knead it a little bit. But it's really no big deal.
Okay.
I mean, that's just natural, there's really not much you can do. Yeah, okay, so oil paints. Oh, I got one from a friend, she was moving, so, you can get these, I guess she made these with popsicle sticks, you can, squeeze the rest out of it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and they make these also with plastic things. You probably get them at Walmart for the toothpaste. As opposed to in an art material store, it will be the same thing, but it'll be double the price
Oh
because
my
it's
gosh.
art.
Huh.
Okay, so that's the paint. Then the brushes. In acrylics, we use the synthetic brushes, right? Pretty much. For oil paint, usually what you know is that you use bristle brushes. They're made from hog's hair and they're a little bit stiffer. I personally don't like them at all. When I paint with them, I seem to be taking more paint off the canvas than putting it on. Other people swear by it. They're really made for oil paint, the bristle brushes, but I like the acrylic brushes, the synthetic ones.
Oh.
So most of the bristle brushes, and if you're not sure, the first time you buy brushes, I wouldn't buy them on the internet. I would actually go to a store where you can touch them and feel them. So you know the difference. And also, some are more stiff than others. All the bristle brushes are usually that off-white color. And again, they're a little bit stiffer. And all the synthetic brushes, they're usually this golden color, or they're pure white, or they're black. And they're much, much softer. Actually, let me pass that around. The other thing is, just like with acrylics, they're long handles. Not like, let's see here. Like this one. That would be a watercolor brush.
Oh.
Because with watercolor, you either sit or you hover over your work table and you paint like this with watercolor. With acrylics and oils, you usually paint standing up. You should be painting standing up. Let me see that. Oops. Okay, so you would be painting like this. That looks very elegant, very artsy, so try to do that. But the reason for that is if we paint, and usually acrylic painting or an oil painting is usually a little bit bigger than something that fits. So if you prop that up and you would have to paint up here while you're sitting, you don't really see what you're doing. So the most important thing for your art really is to evaluate your whole thing while you're painting by stepping back. If you're constantly noodling here like this, I have this focus right here, I don't see what I'm doing here, then I'm painting here, then I don't know how this affects this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're standing over here and you paint here, I can see how this color affects this and this. Also, if you're standing, you're way more prone to step back and just double check everything. If you're sitting down, it's much harder to get up and step back. When I paint, I probably do, and most other plein air artists or oil painters do that, I would say they step back after at least every 5th brush stroke.
Oh, okay.
And you'll get used to that.
Mhm.
But it really makes a big difference because you can see the whole forest for the trees.
Mhm.
Don't see, whatever, however that works. But yeah, so that's why we have the long handled brushes. You would never paint like this, ever. You always have to hold it as far away as possible and very light. So you're not gonna, we're not writing a check and you don't want this. So very light, so you can actually paint with your whole arm, not just your wrist.
And what about the detail, the fine detail, even?
Yes. Yeah, you'll get used to that. You first start with a big brush, and then as you move into details, then you switch to smaller brushes. And if you have a really small detail, let's say, oh, I'm doing this church steeple in this tiny window right here. Or if I would do it in a portrait and I put a highlight in the eye at the very end. Details are at the very end. So I have all this done, this is all wet. So I'm going to put this detail in here. I'm not going to go like this and fuddle around with that because this is wet. I can't put my hand right here. So they have a stick, it's from German, it's called Malstick, which means it's a painting stick. I just made one myself, but you can do anything. Some people use a curtain rod or just a stick they find in the woods, it doesn't matter, or
Cane?
cane. A cane, because you can hook it over here, but basically this is the principle. If this was longer, sorry. You can lean this here, and then this you can put your hand on this stick, and then you can paint the little detail very accurately. So you can do that. That's how you do that. But again, you first start with a very generic shape. You don't start with a teeny tiny brush. You start with the biggest brush possible, and not all the details, just maybe the field and then the whole thing, and then you put in the clouds and the little, flowers and stuff like that. Same as acrylic painting. Okay, let's see here. When you start a painting, you're going to have your canvas, and we're going to go through each step. I just don't want to have this video for too long. So we're going to have a canvas. What are you going to do first? Gesso it. Okay. Then what I usually do and what most people do, and I think we did that in the acrylics, we're going to put a wash on it, some color, right? We do that because it's very hard to paint on white, because you can't judge your colors right. So any color is good, but white. So we're going to put a wash on there. You can do that with acrylic paint, because gesso is an acrylic primer. So a lot of people say, can you mix acrylics and oils? No, you can't mix them, but you can put oils on top of acrylics. You can't put acrylics on top of oil. So the easiest thing to remember is, what can I do with oils and acrylics? Well, the gesso is an acrylic primer, so that's acrylic. So acrylic can go underneath, oil can go on top, not the other way. You're going to totally destroy that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Gesso, put a wash on there, and then how we're going to put my subject on here. I wouldn't recommend a pencil, because the graphite kind of leaches through the oil paint sometimes. And then you have this metallic line somewhere. The best way to do it is to use charcoal. The charcoal sticks that we used. And that's not a fine detail, because you're just kind of putting your generic shapes on there. Like when I did that, I just, did a little bit here of the village, a round thing for the tree, a round thing here for this tree, and a couple of lines. So you do that in charcoal, we'll do all that, and then you can kind of wipe that off, because you know how powdery that is. So, but the charcoal underneath the oil paint is fine, and then you start painting with oil paint. And there are two main techniques to put oil paint on your canvas, and we'll try both of them. One is alla prima, and one is glazing technique. The glazing technique was very popular in the Renaissance. Remember where they all look kind of like brownish, and everything is very soft. When you look at the painting, there's no ridges like Van Gogh, it's very thick and impasto. That wouldn't happen. So it's done through many glazes, so a lot of layering. Takes a long time, and you get kind of the luminous glow a little bit. Now with the alla prima, basically means alla prima in one sitting. Now that doesn't mean that I'm painting this in one sitting, alla prima, that if I start at 9 o'clock and when I'm tired at 2, this should be done. It just means that I don't layer a lot of stuff. So if I painted this sky, that's probably the only layer of blue. If I did this green, that's probably the only layer. So you just don't go over stuff that you already painted as a layer. You just do it one time and it's there. But you can do it in several sessions.
What do you do? Is that what you do? or not?
Yeah, I would say nowadays, 95% of oil painters paint in alla prima.
Oh.
Yeah, so, and there's pros and cons. It's just faster, and it's just more immediate, and the colors are way more vibrant, which is more modern now. Nobody wants that muted, dully brown overall feeling, like, you know, the Madonna sitting in front of a made-up landscape, that kind of thing. That usually was very brownish stuff, so nobody really paints like that. Just real quick on, okay, so that would be the painting. What do I do when I'm done? My brushes are caked with oil paint. So we usually have a little thing of turpentine or mineral spirits. So you kind of wash them out. You would, in the turpentine, just to get most of the gunk off. Then you take paper towels. That's the second thing that you need a lot of in oil painting. A huge tube of white and lots of paper towels. So you rinse it in turpentine, and there's still stuff on it. Then I would wipe it like this, and there's still, you know, stuff on there. And then you can get a bar of soap, or really anything. But one of my students gave it to me, and it works really good. It's a glycerin soap at the dollar store. But basically, you can fit it in the palm of your hand. So you go to the sink, and you run your water, and you put a little water on there, and then you go and swirl this around, and the water mixes with the soap, and it really gets this clean.
Wow, I like that.
And I think the nice thing about this is that just buy a different bar of soap than your regular soap, so your husband doesn't use the oily stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said, it fits nice in there, so that's a really nice thing. You don't have to buy the special oil cleaning soaps that they have at Michael's that are like $7 for a bottle or something like that. This works fine. A regular bar soap. All right. I think that's about all the materials. I hope I didn't forget anything. Oh, one more thing, and then I can turn off the video. Then you're done with your painting. It's an oil painting. It dries very slow. When do I varnish it, and how do I frame that? As a generic rule, you shouldn't varnish your painting for about 6 months. Now that's a long time. If you already sell it before that, or like when I go to the plein air events, you know, we paint it, and as soon as it's done, we hang it, and then hopefully by the evening somebody buys it. So we can't really varnish it. There are a whole bunch of products where you can varnish it while it's still wet, but that's not for you guys. The normal way is you wait till it's dry. So I painted this probably two months ago, and I paint pretty thin. So as a general rule, it's probably anything is dry to the touch in about 2 weeks under normal circumstances. So if I'm dying to put this in a frame and I want to varnish it and get it to a gallery or something, then after about 2-3 weeks, I go like this just a little bit and kind of test some areas. And if I don't get any paint on my fingers, then it's probably good. So if you're testing it, don't just go like this. So just a little tab, just to make sure. When we do we're gonna go over it a little bit again on the color charts, right? Where I said you learn a lot. What you learn with the oil paints on that is also what color, certain colors dry faster than others. Like the browns dry really fast. Any cadmiums, like reds and yellows, take forever to dry. So if you know all that, I'm not gonna go right in my white cloud and test it out, because that also dries a little bit slower than any browns. So again, the color charts, can't emphasize it enough, really good exercise, and you learn a lot about everything. So now that I know it's dry, you can spray it with varnish, or you can buy varnish in a bottle and just brush it on. But again, if there's one point where it's really not dry and you brush it on, then you might smear that. And these are nice.
Okay.
So I'm actually gonna varnish this for you guys out there. I'm gonna show it to you real quick. And then it smells, leave it outside for about half a day, and then you can put it in a frame. How do you frame some oil paintings? That's the nice thing, and that's why I mainly switched to oil painting, because I was doing watercolor. It's just way cheaper to frame it, because you're not allowed to put glass over an oil painting. Like in a watercolor, you have to mat it, and you have to put glass over it, and then you put it in a frame, and the whole thing will cost you $50 to $100 to stick a watercolor in a frame. For something like this, all you do is buy a simple wood frame, and that's it. You don't need a mat, you don't need glass, and you know, a nice frame costs $20, $30. So it's way easier. You don't have to cut a mat, learn how to cut a mat. That's just another whole science in itself. So it's really much cheaper to frame an oil painting than anything else. And yeah, if you're ever at a show and it falls down, then there's not a whole bunch of glass. It's just really not that big of a deal. Or if you're painting in the rain, you can paint in the rain in oil, really. Because that doesn't really matter if the back gets wet. Yeah, that probably would be your only concern, but you can paint in the rain, if you're so inclined. All right, oh, someone coming. So I think that's about it. So I'm going to turn off the video right now. I hope you'll learn something, and I hope it was clear and that you could hear everything. See you later.
Bye.
Bye from everybody.